From the rise of a grocery store worker's son to the feared and respected mob boss of Philadelphia, Angelo Bruno's life is filled with secrets and speculation. Known as the Gentle Don, Bruno's nonviolent rule brought fortune to the Philadelphia Mafia, but his end was anything but peaceful. Was he tied to the infamous disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa, or was it all speculation? And what ignited the violent gang wars after his death? For over 2 decades, Angelo Bruno's name was synonymous with the Philadelphia mob, a criminal empire he reshaped from a chaotic, violent syndicate into a well-oiled machine centered on order and profitability. His tenure began in 1959, and under his leadership, the organization not only thrived, but became a formidable force within the American underworld. Unlike many other mob bosses who ruled with an iron fist, Bruno's preference for diplomacy over bloodshed earned him the moniker the Gentle Don. His ability to keep the peace and focus on financial gain rather than violence set him apart in a world often driven by brutal power struggles. Bruno's influence extended well beyond Philadelphia, reaching into the upper echelons of the mafia. He was well regarded by key figures such as Russell Bufalino, a respected crime boss and associate who shared a long-standing friendship with Bruno. Their relationship and criminal dealings were later brought to life in the 2019 film The Irishman, which portrayed some of the darker chapters of mob history, including Bruno's possible connections to one of America's most enduring mysteries, the disappearance of Union leader Jimmy Hoffa. Bruno's reputation for nonviolence, however, did not shield him from the dangerous world in which he operated. The circumstances surrounding his death in 1980 were a stark contrast to the way he conducted his business. Gunned down in his own car in a mob-ordered execution, Bruno's demise was as gruesome as it was shocking, underscoring the harsh reality that even the Gentle Don was not immune to the violent undercurrents that defined organized crime. Angelo Bruno, born as Angelo Annaloro in 1910 in Sicily, would later come to be known as one of the most influential mob bosses in Philadelphia's history. His family's move to the United States marked the beginning of a new chapter for young Angelo, who grew up in the bustling city where his father opened a grocery store. Working in the family shop gave Bruno a taste of hard work, but it was the allure of the criminal world that truly captivated him. Even in his youth, he found ways to make money on the side, engaging in small-time illegal activities that would eventually draw him deeper into the Philadelphia underworld. As he immersed himself in mob life, Angelo chose to change his last name from Annaloro to Bruno, a tribute to the respected Philadelphia mobster Joe Bruno Dovi. This symbolic gesture signaled his full commitment to the world of organized crime. Despite his criminal pursuits, Bruno managed to balance his personal life, marrying his childhood sweetheart, Sue Marenka, and starting a family with 2 children. Yet, even with a wife and kids at home, his ties to the mob only grew stronger over the years, cementing his role within the criminal organization. The turning point in Bruno's criminal career came in 1959, when Dovi passed away, and a wave of arrests decimated the ranks of the Philadelphia Mafia. With many senior figures either deceased or imprisoned, Angelo Bruno found himself in a position to seize control of the organization. He took the reins of the Philadelphia mob, all while maintaining a front of legitimacy through several business ventures that appeared above board. This approach set him apart from many of his contemporaries, who often resorted to brute force to assert their dominance. Bruno's leadership style was unconventional for a mob boss. He approached the criminal enterprise with the strategic mindset of a businessman. His goal was to prioritize profit over violence, transforming the mob into a more structured and lucrative operation. By minimizing internal conflicts and gang wars, he created a stable environment that maximized financial gains across various illegal ventures, from gambling to loan sharking. His preference for negotiation and discretion earned him the nickname the Gentle Don, as he became known for his ability to get what he wanted without resorting to bloodshed. Under Bruno's command, the Philadelphia mob reached unprecedented levels of profitability, largely due to his focus on building influential connections. He formed alliances with powerful political figures and influential businessmen, ensuring a level of protection that allowed him to conduct his operations with minimal interference from law enforcement. However, his carefully crafted reputation faced a serious threat in the aftermath of President John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963, when Bruno's name surfaced in the FBI's investigation. Angelo Bruno's devotion to his family was a cornerstone of his life, even as he led the Philadelphia mob with an iron grip behind the scenes. Throughout his entire marriage, he remained with his wife, Sue Bruno, and together they raised 2 children. Despite the criminal empire he built, Bruno managed to maintain the appearance of a loving husband and dedicated father, balancing his dangerous underworld activities with a more conventional family lifestyle. His commitment to keeping his personal life separate from his mob dealings was evident, but there were always signs that hinted at the true nature of his work. For his daughter, Jean Bruno, the realization that her father was no ordinary businessman came gradually. Reflecting on her childhood, she recalled moments that seemed normal at the time but later took on a different meaning. "I always had the sense that something was wrong," she admitted in an interview. She remembered their family home on Broad Street, where some of the windows were painted black. At the time, it seemed ordinary to her, but she later learned that the darkened windows were a precaution taken because her father was running an illegal numbers racket. This subtle blending of family life with the realities of organized crime illustrated the complexities of growing up as Angelo Bruno's daughter. Although Angelo Bruno was known for his low-profile approach to mob leadership, he wasn't above enjoying the perks that came with his status. His lifestyle included occasional brushes with glamour and celebrity. Jean Bruno recounted an encounter that highlighted her father's reputation in high society. She saw the legendary singer Frank Sinatra at a bar and asked her father if he had gone over to say hello. In a display of the quiet confidence that defined his persona, Bruno replied, "No. He came up and said hello to me." It was a small but telling moment that reflected his understated yet commanding presence, even in the company of iconic figures. The lavish side of mob life also extended to Jean's mother, Sue Bruno, who occasionally indulged in luxurious items that hinted at the family's hidden wealth. One day, Jean found her mother trying on a set of stunning jewels. Curious about their origin, she asked where they had come from, and her mother casually revealed that they once belonged to Marilyn Monroe. According to Sue, the jewels had been given to Angelo by Joe DiMaggio, Monroe's former husband, who was heartbroken over the end of their relationship. Such connections underscored the reach and influence of Angelo Bruno, whose network extended far beyond Philadelphia's streets. While Angelo Bruno may not have personally pulled the trigger on any killings, his influence and connections in the criminal underworld suggest that he could have been involved in orchestrating some of the most infamous hits. Among these is the mysterious disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa, a case that continues to fascinate and elude investigators. Bruno's ties to powerful figures in the mafia, particularly in upstate Pennsylvania, and his relationship with Frank the Irishman Sheeran, a known mob hitman, paint a picture of a man who may have had a role in planning such a high-profile crime. Bruno's connection to Sheeran, who was a trusted associate within the Philadelphia mob and had carried out murders on behalf of various crime lords, adds weight to this suspicion. On his deathbed, Sheeran recounted his life as a hitman in Charles Brandt's I Heard You Paint Houses, where he confessed to performing several assignments for Angelo Bruno. In recalling their first interaction, Sheeran described how Bruno's instructions were delivered in a cryptic but unmistakable manner. The mob boss simply told him, "You gotta do what you gotta do," a phrase that Sheeran understood as a green light for carrying out a hit. He likened it to a military order where the implication was clear without the need for further explanation. Sheeran's connections went beyond his work with Bruno. He also maintained close ties to Jimmy Hoffa, the powerful union leader who became president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters with significant backing from the mafia. Hoffa and Sheeran shared a long-standing friendship and a history of cooperation, which included Sheeran taking care of business for Hoffa when necessary. Hoffa's criminal dealings and associations with influential mob figures such as Russell Bufalino and Angelo Bruno were instrumental in his rise, but they also complicated his life when his illegal activities caught up to him. After Hoffa was convicted on racketeering charges, the Mafia quickly replaced him with a new leader, distancing themselves from the fallen union boss. When Hoffa was released from prison in 1972, he was determined to reclaim his position at the top of the Teamsters. However, the landscape had changed, and the mob had no intention of letting him return to power. In a desperate bid for support, Hoffa reached out to his old acquaintances, including Angelo Bruno. They met at the Rickshaw Inn, where Bruno delivered a blunt message: Hoffa's time as president was over, and there would be no going back. The rejection was a significant blow to Hoffa, who would vanish not long after this meeting, sparking one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. According to Sheeran's own confessions, it was Bufalino who ultimately decided Hoffa's fate, hiring Sheeran to carry out the execution. The plan, as Sheeran described it, involved luring Hoffa into a car, driving him to a deserted house in Detroit, and shooting him twice in the back of the head. While Sheeran did not explicitly implicate Angelo Bruno in this confession, the mob's interconnected nature suggests that the Philadelphia boss likely had some involvement or at least knowledge of the operation. Angelo Bruno's life came to a violent end that was as shocking as it was ironic, considering his long-standing reputation as a mob boss who preferred negotiation over bloodshed. Despite his efforts to maintain peace and stability within the Philadelphia Mafia, Bruno's fate was sealed in a gruesome manner that sent shockwaves throughout the underworld. On the night of March 21, 1980, the 69-year-old crime lord met his demise while sitting in the front passenger seat of a car parked outside his modest South Philadelphia row house. In an instant, a gunshot to the back of his head ended the reign of the gentle dawn. His driver, John Stanfa, who would later become a prominent mob figure in his own right, survived the attack with minor injuries. The exact circumstances surrounding Bruno's murder remain shrouded in mystery. The identity of the triggerman and the true motives behind the killing have never been definitively established. However, speculation has long pointed toward Bruno's strict stance against the narcotics trade as a possible catalyst for his death. Unlike many other mob bosses who embraced the lucrative drug business, Bruno imposed firm restrictions on drug trafficking within Philadelphia, arguing that the risks and law enforcement attention far outweighed the rewards. This conservative approach to organized crime created tensions among factions that saw the drug trade as an opportunity for massive profits. In the immediate aftermath of his death, the streets of Philadelphia bore witness to an unprecedented level of violence as various mob factions vied for control. Bruno's assassination sparked a brutal gang war that plunged the city into chaos, leading to a wave of killings as rival groups sought to fill the power vacuum left by his sudden departure. What had once been a relatively stable and profitable criminal enterprise descended into a bloody conflict, with bodies piling up and the city's organized crime network collapsing under the weight of internal strife. Crowds of onlookers gathered around the crime scene that night, straining for a glimpse of the slain mob boss who remained seated in the car, his body eerily upright even in death. The sight of Angelo Bruno, the once powerful and seemingly untouchable figure, now reduced to a victim of the same violence he had sought to avoid, served as a stark reminder of the volatile nature of mob life. The impact of Bruno's murder reverberated far beyond the underworld. The Philadelphia Daily News later reflected on his legacy, suggesting that if Bruno had not been so successful at keeping a low profile and avoiding activities that drew law enforcement attention, Philadelphia might not have developed one of the nation's first organized crime strike forces. His efforts to maintain a less conspicuous criminal operation allowed the mob to operate relatively unchallenged during his reign, but his violent death marked a turning point in the battle against organized crime in the city. For those who knew Angelo Bruno personally, his legacy as the Gentle Don endures. Despite the bloody aftermath of his assassination and the many controversies that surrounded his criminal career, he is remembered as a mob boss who adhered to an old-school code of conduct, prioritizing business over senseless violence and maintaining a level of dignity that was rare in the world of organized crime. His death not only closed a chapter on a significant era for the Philadelphia Mafia, but also served as the beginning of the end for the traditional structures of organized crime in the city. Angelo Bruno's life and death remain a powerful reminder of the precarious balance between order and chaos within the Mafia, where even a leader known for his restraint could be swept away by the very forces he sought to control. His story is not just one of a mob boss who was ultimately betrayed, but also a reflection of the shifting tides in organized crime, where power struggles and greed inevitably led to the downfall of even the most revered figures.